everyone. Good morning. Hope all of you are safe. Welcome to the webinar by Department of Electronics and Communication and IEEE student branch of St. Joseph Engineering College, Bangalore. We are happy and delighted to start our ECE webinar series 2020. And today's webinar is on digital existence, the challenges within by Mr. Sanjay Sahai, ex-IPS officer. Before we start, I would like to bring it to your notice some house rules that need to be followed. Your mics are muted by default. Please use chat box for any queries and questions to the speaker. The slides by the speakers will not be mailed to anyone. The recording of the webinar will be available on SJEC YouTube channel in a week's. The webinar is purely on the basis of gaining knowledge and self-improvement, but we cannot 100% guarantee that whatever guarantee and certify that without any assessment, which is also difficult in this online mode. Hence, please do not ask for certificates. It will not be provided. Feedback links will be shared at the end of the question and answer session. Please fill it. It will help us to improve our future webinars. Now I request Dr. Dayakshini, Head of the Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering, to welcome the gathering. Over to you, ma'am.
Good morning. I am very happy to welcome you all to the first webinar of ECE Department on Digital Existence, the Challenges Within by Mr. Sanjay Sahai, ex-IPS officer. On behalf of the management and staff of St. Joseph Engineering College, Bangalore, I welcome you, sir, to this webinar.
Thank you.
I'm very happy to welcome Dr. UC Niranjan, Director, Manipal.net, to this webinar. Welcome you, sir. Also, I would like to welcome the program coordinators, Mr. Keith Fernandez and Ms. Rashmi H, for arranging such a wonderful webinar at this difficult situation. I thank both of you. I also welcome all the participants and request them to make use of this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Now I call upon Ms. Rashmi Halemane, Assistant Professor, Department of ECE and IEEE SJEC Student Branch Counselor, to introduce today's speaker to the gathering.
Good morning, everyone. I, Rashmi H, Assistant Professor, Department of ECE and Branch Counselor, SJEC IEEE Student Branch, take it as my privilege to introduce Mr. Sanjay Sahai to the august audience. Sir belongs to the 1989 batch of the IPS, born on Karnataka cadre. He has accomplished high degree of professionalism in wide and varied professional assignments. His important assignments providing immense value addition to his professional persona includes Chiefs of Police of 3 districts, Raichur, Mandya and Chamarajanagar, SP and DIG in the state CID, DIG in charge of finance, UN peacekeeping in Kosovo and Sudan, Additional Commissioner in Bangalore City, Head of Police Computerization, Communications and State Crime Records Bureau. He created an enterprise resource planning software, the Police IT, for Karnataka State Police and headed the CCTNS project since its inception in 2008. He has gained immense expertise in the broadband of technologies like TETRA, geospatial technology, ERP, interception, etc., and is regularly invited to deliver lectures at national and international forums on these topics. He has been writing articles for a large number of magazines, mostly professional ones. He took charge as IGP Eastern Range located at Davangere from September 2011 to June 2013, from July 2013 to December 2013 as IGP Internal Security Division Karnataka, from Jan 2014 to December 2014 as an ADGP Police Computer Wing, working with assignments, deals with the comprehensive computerization of the Karnataka State Police, stabilizing of functioning of police ERP software and its enhancement, and etc. From Jan 2015, he worked as an ADGP in Grievances and Human Rights Wing. He is credited for imbibing technology in policing. In his tenure as ADGP, he has set up the police IT ecosystems for Karnataka, which later came under the broad spectrum of crime and criminal tracking networks and systems, a central government project. An avid public speaker on information technology, cybersecurity, and management issues, He has been delivering guest lectures as at premium institutions and corporate offices on governance, technology, management, and self-improvement. The IPS officer was one of the main architects of Police Hackathon held in the state last year. He opted for voluntary retirement from Indian Police Service and was relieved on March 31st, 2020. I'm proud to say that he's one of my mentors, and it's my honor to welcome you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Rashmi, for a very, very liberal introduction. And I hope and I presume that over the course of this lecture, I stand up to all the expectations which are raised by St. Joseph's College. So first and foremost, I thank St. Joseph's Engineering College, Mangalore, for and the principal and the management of the college for having invited me for this particular lecture. And I think this is the age and time where all of us are in a very transformative and a very nebulous and a crisis-filled situation. As we move forward, we need some direction, some thought processes as we go by. So I thank Rashmi, I thank principal and management of the college, I thank Dr. Layakshmi and Mr. Keith Fernandez for having all the pains to get me here. And now it's time we get ahead with the presentation. So I'm just in the process of sharing the presentation. After that, we will continue with the lecture. Is it on?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Okay. So I'll go on the full screen and then we'll start. I think all of us have been going through transformative time since around March this year. And none of us ever imagined that we will land into a situation where there will be no schools, no colleges, there will be no offices, nothing would be working. And we will get into a digital transformation, which is one of its kind, which we have never imagined. And the best of the IT behemoths all across the face of the earth, they have been trying to bring around this digital transformation, which they have not been able to in last 15 years, but a health crisis of this nature, where whole of the world was in a quicksand or is still in a quicksand, has completely transformed us into a digital animal. So that is where we stand today, and that is how this term has come of a digital existence. Not that we did not have a digital existence earlier, but it was complementary and supplementary to physical existence. But as we move further, I think our physical existence and all other types of existence are complementary and supplementary to our digital existence. Digital existence by the very nature of the ecosystem in which we are. So that digital existence has become by default our main existence. Suffice to say that in a transformative age, there are no preparations made, and we don't know where we are going. There will be immense challenges in this journey. For us to find the new normal, for us to find a place, existence, a different world, a different equilibrium, a different education, a different life, and a different society altogether. Digital transformation primarily hits at the basic existence of the society itself. So the new norm you people can make out, you can't touch anybody, you can't hug anybody, you literally can't do anything. And then you are holed up in your rooms and you are in your houses. What it means, how much of how much mentally taxing it is, I think all of you people would have realized by now. So this I call as my tryst with digital destiny. And when it is your tryst with digital destiny, you can only be your guide. There will be absolutely nobody. We can come there to help you out, show you some direction. We can tell about our experiences, but there is no denying the fact that finally you can only be your guide. And why I say this, because I have been in this state for last around 20 years, and all throughout my journey, when most of the world was not interested in digital transformation, I was a part of that particular journey and having tried my level best with technologies, with management, with schools, colleges, guides, experts going into field situation. I don't think anybody has been able to guide me. It's a different story that the inputs which you get across this journey, those inputs, your practices, experience, your capability to execute things, though finally they stitch up into a narrative, they stitch up into a story. And that is the story of my technological journey, my tryst with digital destiny. And I presume that that particular journey and the thought process which I've gathered in the process will help you understand as to where you are and what will be your journey like as a teacher, as a professor, as a lecturer, as a management person, as a student, as a potential employee. So this is the journey which I want to unravel with you in next around 45 minutes, and then we'll open to a question and answer session. So you can be your only guide. And over the course, we have already been advised that this PPT will not be shared. but going against whatever directions have already been issued. So this PPT will be available for the St. Joseph Engineering College, and then it is left to their discretion whether to share or not to share it. I have no issues with whatever intellectual property which I have, which I don't have to share with the outside world. So we move further. So in my tryst with destiny, I'm with digital destiny. I have realized that over a period of time, you have to find your own equilibrium. How much you are comfortable with, say, the social media, how much you are comfortable with your gadget, how much you are comfortable with YouTube, Wikipedia, communication, literally anything and everything will decide how you interact from morning till evening. We are spending 13, 14 hours on WhatsApp. I can tell you with all amount of confidence and humility that you will not be attending your work the way it should be attended. In the process of digital presence, it should not happen that you miss out on the realities of life, on what you intend to achieve, and in the manner it should be achieved. It does not happen that just because we are living in a digital existence, all the rules of the game, which has been happening for billions and millions of years, so they are completely forgotten. The core values of human existence will remain the same, and the core expertise will also remain the same. It is just the different value adds or the dynamic values which finally get integrated with core values and the core expertise of your knowledge, of your competencies, of your skill. That changes the whole landscape, and that is the landscape which you are supposed to change. And if you don't get into that enmeshed new normal of your competence, skills, and capabilities, you will not be able to find a job. You will not be able to find career advancement, and nobody knows in the years to come how far and in which manner, how our competencies will be evaluated. So there are absolutely no communication skills which are required still in the pre-COVID days, and it's very difficult to find teachers and professors who are in the public domain, who are lecturing or who are trying to make change happen. But as we move further, when your classrooms actually move inside your homes, inside your rooms, that particular process. What also happens that you get into the rooms of 40 people, 50 people, 60 people, all your students, and there are parents, there are your students who evaluate you. So this sort of a prying eye on the capability of the teacher, the capability to communicate, capability to extract work out of the student. I think that prying eye was never there. I've never been able to say how the teacher used to teach my son, whether in Bishop Cotton Boys School or in National Public School or when he was in IIIT Hyderabad. I never got a chance, but now we see even young, very small kids, preschool kids. So the parents sit down and they see how they're being taught. So this is the digital transformation we are into. So you have to find your own equilibrium. And that equilibrium is your confidence, your capability, your systems and your processes to manage the changed world. What you were till before March and what you will be in the days to come will be radically two different, might be diametrically opposite professionals, individuals, and experts. It is your time to decide your destiny. It is your time to decide your own equilibrium. And if you do decide, then the whole world will connive to help you. Because your college, your institution, your department, and might be the people at large in Bangalore and all the other institutions would be looking for some role models. Unfortunately, we have not found role models yet. And we have not found a teaching pedagogy which is completely in tune with the digital times. I hope and I presume that it will happen in the days to come. So the whole world will connive. And then once the whole world connives on your model, your understanding, your thought process, your pedagogy, your capability to deliver and your capability to impact, then it becomes our shared destiny. And I did police IT for nearly around 27 months in the years 2009 to 2011. It was my destiny. I sat down there for 27 months in that, whatever, in the offices which we have, in the homes which we have, for working nearly 11 to around 20, 21 hours in different phases. Finally, when it was delivered and was found of use, and when the whole state started running on it, then it became a shared destiny. So that digital transformation, that digital journey is the journey today of literally anybody and everybody. And it is very nice and heartening to say that even small kids who are in their preschool and even the oldest of the teachers who would be of my age or even beyond. So all of them are coming on the same digital page. It was my aspiration, it was my dream. And unfortunately, so it may be that when I went in for my voluntary retirement and when I left office on 31st of March, there was hardly anybody. So they said it is the irony of the situation that a man who actually spent lots and lots of years to bring digital transformation and the digital platform into the police and into the governmental system had to bid farewell in a digital mode. So that is a part of the humor and wit of life, and we have to take it in our stride. But till around 44 years of age, suffice to say, Rashmi gave us the whole background as to where I come from, what I am, and how much of technology I know. But the backdrop is that I'm a history postgraduate from St. Stephen's College, and nothing to do with technology and science since my 10th class. And in a later stage, somehow, when I joined United Nations, I realized that technology is the future, and I'm getting got into technology somewhere. 2000, it would be somewhere mid-May, and from that day till today, I think I have been a part of this technological journey for myself, for community, for society, for enterprises, for government, and literally the nation in the last 20 years. And wherever I've come and whatever I deliver, in which manner and how much it helps and support you, that is known to the country by now. So at that particular time in 2008 and 9, when I joined the Karnataka computerization as their head, I knew computers to the level that how to use it for your personal requirements to a reasonably high level, but to take it to the enterprise level, to be a part, to become a part of a CEO of a police IT enterprise was a journey which was very, very scary. It was treacherous at times. You did not know what was happening. You did not have much of resources. But certainly I traversed the journey, and in around 9-10 months' time, I was able to find my equilibrium. I was able to find my new normal. And over a period of 27 months, I delivered much more than what was expected out of me, and much more what they were able to deliver in around 10 years. So that particular point in time, when I was seeing failure, I was seeing the end of the journey, I went into literally the corner every particular time. At that point in time, I started reading Steve Jobs, and there I realized that most of these entrepreneurial journeys, though I'm not an entrepreneur, but most of these entrepreneurial journeys, so they start like that, they continue like that till the time it becomes a huge commercial success. They are loners, they don't have much of support, they do huge amount of reading, they do huge amount of hit and trial, they find their own route, so they have to become comfortable with uncertainty on a completely untrodden path, trying to fulfill their own dream. Certainly your journey will not be as difficult. Nonetheless, transformation is something which human beings avoid. However much we say that change is the only static thing in life, change is the first thing which we avoid. And that is how all our bureaucratic, academic, literally all sorts of structures and systems work on the least amount of change as possible. So what two things I liked about Steve Jobs? So one is that he had, as his biographer Isaac Watterson says, that he had a distorted reality field, that he looked at reality from a different point of view, from a different distortion. So he had a different reality, which he thought is there, which he thought he can make it happen. And over a period of time, his distorted reality field became reality, and our reality not only got distorted, it completely got decimated. And that is how his enterprise, his literally anything and everything is a part of his distorted reality field, which has become reality. And we have gone beyond that, and that has led to the digital transformation of a nature which we are experiencing today. And the second thing which was extremely fascinating about this great entrepreneur, the biggest innovator of all times, is that he believed in simplicity. It's not the simplicity which you can find in backwaters of Orissa or Jharkhand or backwaters of Africa or any of those areas which has not seen much of technological change or modern emancipation, as we call it. This is the different sort of simplicity. This is the simplicity when you understand the complexities of modern human existence, the technology, the processes, the systems, literally anything and everything. And then you decide on a simplicity of functioning, of doing, of running an enterprise, of creating products. So that is what you find on the iPhone and find on iPad Pro. You just have a button. And as we have proceeded to the iPad Pro Professional, in iPad Pro, so there you don't even find a button. It's just a small line and you push it off and then you start getting the menu. So this is the simplicity which he believed in. And he says, if you are able to achieve simplicity, it's very difficult to achieve simplicity. But if you are able to achieve, you can move mountains. So that is what I believed in. I tried to find out the simplicity of the complex environment in which I was working. The complex environment was not only limited to technology or the lack of technological manpower, technological thought process of the funding. It was also the great ecosystem of Indian government and Indian governance and the things which you had to tackle, and bringing this whole enterprise together, stitching it as as a one team, and finally, over a period of 20 months or 22 months, creating a product and deploying it across Karnataka today, it runs at 1,607 locations across Karnataka. And this is a software which doesn't work online. It took around 9 years for Wipro to understand that it is an ERP solution. So what I created from 2009 to 11 is an ERP solution on .NET 2.6, which is 2.5 million lines of coding, 515 screen, 422 reports, and it runs on its own intranet, which is known as the Karnataka State Police Wide Area Network, which is a combination or a synthesis of MPLS, VPN over broadband, internet lease line aggregating into a two-tier data center, and which runs as of now on a private cloud on a network which is on VPN over FTTH, and we work only online. And the software, it deals with nearly more than I think a TB of data by now. And there is one screen which we call as the crime summary or the crime statement, which handles nearly 6 lakh cases of 3 years, which can be drilled down to nearly 2 crore documents. So that is the strength, that is the ability which we have put to the police IT software. This is an ERP solution, might be the most humongous ERP solution created out of no kernel imported. There is no SAP, there is nothing. The whole kernel has been created here. The whole thing has been created here. It is tested here, operated here, and it's being run here. And as we have moved from 2010 and 11 to 2020, everything has been tried on this ERP solution. It has been integrated to Sakala, now it has been integrated to Seva Sindhu, it was integrated to Passport Seva, it has been integrated to literally anything and everything, inclusive of the India's premier police computerization project, that is the CCTNS, Crime and Criminal Tracking Network and Systems. That is the premier project of Government of India. It's supposed to be on the mission mode project, and it has moved on to what we call as the ICJS. So it is interoperable criminal justice system which you are looking in for, and that will be the fructification of nearly 20 years of computerization in different fields. It is in the police, it is in the judiciary, it is in the prisons, forensic science laboratory, fingerprint bureau. So all these come together, and that will be the fructification of all the data and the databases to a desired goal, where the capability and the convenience reaches to an extremely different level, where we know what is happening in the prison department, the prison knows what is happening in the police, the judiciary knows where we are, and on a fixed system of access and privileges, we are able to run a system as one integrated whole. It will become like a one holding company. The whole criminal justice system becomes like a one holding company, and you are able to get the crime yearbook, what we call crime in India, might be at the press of a button and dynamic to that particular date and that particular time. So this is what we intended to create. This is what we have created, and it's running fine for nearly 10 years. And we were completely online. So we are coming in a completely transformative situation. A health crisis earlier had never to do with digital transformation. But unfortunately, as it may be, and I keep repeating over and over again, that this is the first world revolution in which we are. There has never been a time, in a span of 60 to 90 days, the whole world has gone into a churning so that it is difficult today even to realize, even to think what we were in February 2020. May it be your eating habits, maybe your culture, maybe your travel, maybe the way you interact, maybe the way you sleep, maybe the way you live, the way you eat, literally anything and everything has completely transformed. And in the process, what we have done to, as the last straw on the camel's back, because otherwise it would have shattered and finished us completely, and there would have been no civilization left and no communication left. So in the process, we, as the last straw, we caught on to the digital. That happened to be our only savior to maintain the social instinct of a social animal, primarily for communication, primarily to take care of our friends or relatives who are all around the face of this earth. My son remains stranded in London. He works for Google there. So this is the situation where we lived, and I've been telling, I was addressing a panel on parenting. So I said, at 25 years of age, I have been doing digital parenting to him. He was all alone. We used to talk nearly for 2 hours, 3 hours every day, and that was the only solace. So this is solace. So this is where what the digital technology is. Digital technology has transformed our very existence, and digital transformation has provided us the capabilities to live and survive and live for another day and live for another battle and live for a better future and use this crisis and as an opportunity, which is one of its kind, to transform the world in whichever manner we like, to the benefit of literally every stakeholder. And with that COVID situation, that was on the personal communication part of it. On the other part, we have what we call as the WFH, work from home. It's not as simple as it looks. It is completely transformative. The way industrial revolution changed the way we live, we function, we move, we operate, we transact, we design our offices in the very same manner. Work from home has the capability to redesign our very existence itself to a level that if 50% of the IT workforce in Bangalore moves out to from wherever they have come from and still they have the job, what impact it will have on the reality situation, what impact it will have on the rent situation, what impact it will have on the services situation, on the transport, on literally on the electricity, on water, on sewage, you name it and have it. So literally that is the impact which can happen, and there is no going back. World work from home is here to stay. And to a totally different situation, if you can think of it, I still fail to understand, though I was a part of the same circus, I fail to understand why 80% of us were traveling from morning to evening, crisscrossing this country, crisscrossing the world, where things could have happened in a much more convenient manner through any of the tools as we are doing right now. I used to travel, I've traveled any number of times to Mangalore, crisscrossing all of Karnataka, and today I'm doing things after moving out of service in a manner which is very comfortable. And say in the morning, I started preparing for this lecture at around 8 o'clock. And 10:15, I had my breakfast, brunch, lunch, whatever you call it, and I'm ready and right here 11 o'clock. I start with this lecture. So this is the comfort of digital transformation, but it has its own challenges. Whether we have the capability to understand this digital transformation, whether we are able to understand the nuances, whether we are able to understand the pitfalls, whether we are able to understand as to what expertise will be required in the new age. So I think that is the challenge which we are talking about. So the only issue is left: disrupt or be disrupted. So either you be the disruptor or you will get disrupted. And once you get disrupted, you are not sure of the fact whether it will be against your benefits or against your whatever you have visualized for your life. You might become another digital worker, another call center employee. You might just be something which is being aggregated upon, and more than you being aggregated, your machine is getting aggregated, your computing power is aggregated, or whatever. So you are not in control of your own destiny. So this is the future: disrupt or be disrupted. You can make a choice. You might be in any area of competency. You might be in any area of work. There will be somebody who will disrupt the story. All of you know of the Khan Academy. You know what Byju's are doing. You know of lots and lots of other organizations. You simply learn your Udemy and things of that nature. And things might not be far where somebody is able to run a whole educational system out of a data center somewhere on the face of this earth. And we are realizing that our 700 universities, or whatever number of the universities and number of engineering colleges, are not of great use, and they are able to start a central laboratory in big town, and they are able to pull off the show. So this is where we are, and this is the journey which we have to take. This is the picture which I used to generally use when we used to talk about innovation and the digital transformation, the automation, AI being as the apex technology of the present day, and how it will throw off most of the people who are employed basically on the mechanical side, on the repetitive side of the IT world. And today this picture is more ideal, and it manifests the digital reality where we are in. And might be before we move out of the houses, we will be a complete transformed animal with regards to our educational process, with regards to the way we work, with regards to the way we see the world. Might be even before the lockdown, or complete freedom from the physical lockup in which we are in. I think the world will be at least, might be even 100 times more transformed than what we have seen in the last 90 days. So be prepared, be agile, think about it. It is time we think. It's time we try to visualize what the world is. It's time we think when we think that what education would be like in the days to come. So are you the disruptor? This challenge within is that whether you are the disruptor or you're not a disruptor. See, the earlier age where you were completely a bystander, you thought things can happen and I can be a bystander. Today, if you are a bystander, might be in the process, you're thrown out. You are not a part of the picture at all. You're not a part of the mainframe. So this is where the story is. Whether you are a disruptor or you're not a disruptor will decide how long, how far you can go, how long can you stay, and how far can you go, how successful can you be, and how long can you run this race? We don't know how this long haul will be. Spanish flu took around only 3 days. We still don't know what is going to happen of the present predicament where we are in. And being reckless and flimsy and superficial and nebulous will certainly not help the way we are moving forward. So the future of humanity is decided in your absence. If we decide to be absent in all the thought processes, all the discussions which is going on, because you are busy feeding and clothing your kids, you and they will not be exempt from the consequences. This is Yuval Noah Harari, Israeli digital thinker, by teaching, by education, and training and practice. He's a historian, but today he stands tall as the biggest digital thinker might be the world has ever seen. And he has written 3 books. One is Sapiens, Homo Deus, and 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. I think all the 3 together will give you an immense balance to understand as to the world we live in, the roadmap we should take, and how futuristic you can be. I think as a premonition, he has written at least the last book, 21 Lessons of the 21st Century. And I think that can be a guide which can be used anywhere and everywhere to plan academics, enterprise, education, literally anything and everything which you intend to. And the other 2 books, one is by name Abundance by Peter Diamandis. So he was talking about a future where as the population increases, instead of shortage and scarcity and less of money, just because of these exponential technologies. By exponential technologies, I mean your 5G or your robotics, 3D printing, drones, machine learning, AI. So all these basket of technologies, because of these technologies coming into the future of of the world, we will go towards an age of abundance. It might also happen that we'll have money, we'll have the comfort, and we might not have enough of work also. And then was followed by another book called Bold by Peter Diamandis once again. And there they give you the framework of how to create $1 billion company in the shortest possible time. So these are the challenges which you face. And by force, per force, the way we have been pushed into this digital transformation age, in the very same manner, whether you accept or you don't accept, the engineers, the management graduates, whatever you call them, they will be thrown into entrepreneurial journey by force. There will not be enough jobs, there will not be enough employers. There will never be all those strategic, your money getting, your salary getting transferred on the 30th of month. I think that is not going to happen. We are moving into what we call as the gig economy. So most of you would have heard about the gig economy. So gig economy is you're transacted upon for one particular task, one particular project. And that is the end of the story as far as that financial transaction is concerned. And then again, you are transacted or you are picked up for a few hours of work and the whole thing is aggregated. So it is crowdsourcing of human resource. You would have heard crowdsourcing of money, of finance, of entrepreneurship, crowdsourcing of literally anything and everything. Now it is the crowdsourcing of human resource. It can also be crowdsourcing of the computing power, which your laptop has. So these are the challenges which we face as we move forward. So you cannot afford to miss the most major conversation of our time. And when the world is flat, as the Thomas Friedman said, now it is getting into a totally different story, a totally different level, a totally different transformation. That flat and today's flat is totally different. It was only that the knowledge and the information was made available in every part of the world through the internet. Today, now the man does not need to move out from wherever he is. Google has allowed its employees to work from any corner of the world. That's a different story altogether, that they're not able to find flights to get back to their hometowns or home places. And a salary of, say, a lakh of rupee in Bangalore and a salary of 50,000 rupees somewhere in the backwaters of Jharkhand or any of these places, I think people will be happy to take that 50,000 rupees, not take the pains of whatever they face in Bangalore, and be equally productive from that location itself. So this is the challenge where you are. This is the challenge which you face. There can also be a challenge that you are forced to create an online education where there is no need of a physical class at all. And there are lots and lots of areas where you don't need physical classes. After standard 12, where you go to a normal, regular physical education, I think beyond that, there will be lots, I think 50, 60, 70% of whatever education is imparted. I think in liberal arts and humanities and lots of other areas, we will have to decide and we have to see as to which can be imparted in which manner. So that matrix, that research has to be done. So are you engaged with the world? You could have been completely disengaged. You thought you will get your engineering degree, you will get a job. Whatever your boss says, whatever your company says, you will keep doing, and that will be the end of the story. But it is not. It will not be that way any further. So you have to read, you have to write, you have to think, you have to assimilate, you have to plan, and you also have to deliver. So you become a one-man machine. You become a person who can be independent. What the Honorable Prime Minister talks about Atmanirbhar, it has to start with our mentality, our DNA. We Indians are the most dependent of the lot, whether in bureaucracy, whether in politics, whether in our private life, whether it is a guide and researcher relationship. The guide and researcher relationship, I think the level of dependence is just unimaginable. How far and how long can the research go? So the story is, as an individual first, we have to be self-independent or Atmanirbhar, and as an enterprise, as a college, as an institution, as a department. Nonetheless, we have an interface of coming together, and by that collaboration mode, deliver much, much more than which you can individually do, or as a department or as a college do. But you are also independent on your own. And tomorrow, if there's a crisis, there's a tragedy, you can literally keep going on your own feet and keep growing on your own feet. So that is the nature of things which you have. So this is the digital transformation, this is the digital existence. This is the world which we are in. And as a backdrop to that whole world, we call it as the exponential age. So the exponential age, I can give you a very small example wherein this pool is a little pool. This is the 30th day of this particular pool. On the 29th day, it was half. On the 28th day, it was 1/4. On the 27th day, it was 1/8. On the 26th day, it was 1/16. On the 25th day, it was 1/32. If you had seen this on the 25th day, you would have never realized that in just 5 days' time, the whole pool will be full of this beautiful flower called lilies. This is what is exponential change. This is what is geometric progression. This is something which you will not be able to see for years and years. And when that reaches that critical mass, the way it doubles every single day, so that gives you that transformative capability. I think precisely the same thing on the health side, on human existence side, is happening with Corona. When it grows in an exponential manner of 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 16 and 32 initial stages, you don't realize how it is growing, but some variant of exponential change or exponential increase you see there. And then you find 10,000, 20,000, 50,000. It might not be exactly geometric progression, but certainly it is rising exponentially. So disruptive technologies, disruptive innovation, exponential change, and your capability to adapt, bring in this technology, stitch solutions, have entrepreneurial capability is the way ahead. This company controlled nearly 85% of the photography market in 1985. And 3 years down the line, because of their non-capability to understand the nature of change happening in the world and also in their organization, that in the year 2001, this company was completely decimated. It was decimated by a product which was invented by the same company in 1975, which is known as the digital camera, which all of us know. And the way digital camera has invaded every aspect of life. Every gadget we have, there's hardly any gadget today which does not have a digital camera. So this is the capability of a product, and this is the capability of an enterprise, and this is the capability of an age. All the three combined, you have to get into where you fit in. You have to be at the center of the digital universe. A hacker cannot be at the center of the digital universe. A company cannot be at the center of the digital universe. The expert human resource, whether it is academics or whether it is professionals and practitioners, they have to be at the center of the digital universe. What happens in the exponential change? The exponential changes, cost decreases, size decreases, performance increases, and time compresses. So this is what happens. All of you know of the Moore's law, which has been on for last nearly 50 years. Every 18 months to 24 months, the computing capability, the computational power of the world changes. And that is where we are, propelled by Intel, whether we have Intel inside or we don't have Intel inside. But it is propelled by the Intel chip on which this whole digital technology, the digital age runs. Do you understand your digital ecosystem? You live in an ecosystem. Do you understand your ecosystem? How your college operates, how the different interfaces of that college operate, how you basically interact with your university? How do you interact with other colleges? Which are the competing agencies? Which are the people who employ you? So literally, this is the whole digital ecosystem, which we used to call in management as the systems thinking. Unfortunately, over a period of time, this ecosystem thinking and the systems thinking have been completely lost. And every engineer feels that after he finishes engineering, there'll be a placement, and that placement he will get a job, and after that he will get his salary, and then there is no need to learn, and he will go from 9 to 5, whether biometric facial recognition or otherwise. He will go and fill up two or three forms, which will be there, and that is how life will move on. So your understanding and non-understanding of the digital ecosystem in which you live will decide as to where you stand in the digital universe, where you stand as far as your prospects go. Where does the student fit in? Now, there's been huge hue and cry that the students, they come and they ask all sorts of questions. Even the doctors tell today, it's very difficult to interact with the patients which come from the IT sector. Why it is difficult to understand? Because that fellow has gone through lots of literature, free material which is available on the internet. He is ready with whatever he wants to ask to the doctor. And if doctor does not have his knowledge level, which is abreast with the current time, it becomes extremely difficult for him to handle the patient the very same manner. The student would have gone to large number of resources. And after imbibing all the resources, he comes to a class. And when he comes to a class, he will certainly challenge you. If he has not been able, if he has not been able to challenge so far, if that has not become the established streak in the academic world, you can be rest assured that in the days to come, that channel will come from morning till evening. Life will become extremely difficult. They will show you all the data. See, today we are still in the conventional thought process. So we don't want to offend our teacher. And there are lots of other issues, age, respect, and all sorts of our guru, shishya, parampara. So tomorrow what happens, the whole culture changes. And they will tell you, you please check up there. Madam, you're not aware of whatever is happening in the world. If tomorrow he asks you how to deal with some machine learning algorithm which is in the public domain, and you don't know how to use that algorithm or for the impact, or even the name of that particular thing. So this is the challenge which we'll face. So student fits in a totally different slot. He is not a cog in the wheel. And as this digital online education system, it extends more and more. There might be a situation where internships, where knowledge, where guidance, where mentoring, all these things will happen way beyond what you have ever imagined. The dependence of the student on the teacher will go down considerably, and only the right resources with the right capability, right frame of mind, and capability to deliver and transform the child, which child finds to be important, only they will survive. So as we move the comfort and the challenges, even on the student side, the huge amount of challenges, they're spending large amount of time on social media. Their whole concept of understanding education has completely changed. It is not the way we were. And that is not to criticize or say anything about it. Every generation changes, and more so with so much of a transformative thing all across the world, and through technology, through literally anything and everything. So all these things change. Nonetheless, you have to be careful of the things which damage you, which make you stunted, and which come in way, the insurmountables which come in way of you achieving your dreams. Now you see, because of your presence on the social media, there are lots of immigration agencies. They don't allow you to come in those particular countries, whether by way of visa or even at the immigration counter. A lot many times, the candidate or the student or the passenger is asked to go back. And there have been instances in most of the developed world. Jobs. If your digital footprint is not positive, is not proactive, because that is where they go. LinkedIn is supposed to be the hunting ground of jobs. And if you cannot maintain even your LinkedIn profile properly, it becomes very difficult. Yesterday, somebody was telling from the private sector, from the IT world, that at a higher level, they were calling about some L9 or whatever level of managers. As I said, they're not bothered about your CV. They're not bothered about your CV. What they're bothered about is your positive, proactive, technical, digital presence. And if that is there, so everything is done. There's no problem. Higher education. You might be a topper. But when they get into your profile and they find there are lots and lots of things which has a very adverse impact on your attitude, on your mindset, your capability to work, Excelling in one examination is not going to make a great amount of difference. Or if they're looking for some work experience which actually does not exist. So this whole creation of CV and the HR industry, that is not going to go a long way. So for teachers, it's not just knowledge assimilation. Is knowledge assimilation happening? I can tell you, I started with the digital transformation of mine in the year 2000. And over a period of time, I think literally every month, if not every day, I'll be able to tell you what I've been able to assimilate. And from using a Word document. When I started with a Word document, I could not differentiate between save and save as. When I started using computer systems at that particular point in time, I used to use the power button to switch on and switch off. So that is from that vintage which I come. So knowledge assimilation has to happen on a regular basis. And this repeated mechanical knowledge or 1 year of experience getting repeated after 20 years, and then you are claiming that I am a teacher with 20-year vintage and I have all that capability. You would have grown up in your academic professional ladder by way of assistant professor to associate professor to professor. Now that is the ladder the world is not bothered about. It is between you and your UGC, and it can also happen that tomorrow large number of this whole apparatus can become defunct. It is getting defunct. Large parts of the world, it can happen in India. There are at least 11 very big companies who are not even looking for degrees. When my son joined the Booking.com in Amsterdam, they did not ask for his BTech degree. So this is where we stand. It is skill, your capability, your management capabilities, your capability to understand, withstand crisis, to move ahead in life, to guide people, to mentor people, and under any circumstance you will deliver, whatever might be the digital transformation. So the student of today, for him, it is information on the platter. It will keep on increasing with every passing day. And if the professors and the academic institutions, the management and the regulatory authorities, if they still keep maintaining the lackadaisical approach, which they have for decades and decades together, things will be extremely difficult for them, for the educational world, and it will get into a very transformative spin. And then finding the equilibrium would be a very, very difficult story. Online home education, will it become the norm? It is not a simple online education. It is an online home education. When it is a part of the home ecosystem, there are lots and lots of things operate on mind. There are lots and lots of people who are there in the home. Everybody does not have a duplex for a bedroom house. It is on the gadgets which you can afford, the bandwidth which you can provide, the ease and comfort which you can provide to the child. So literally anything and everything will count in the well-being, in the digital well-being, in the educational well-being of the child. How much of foresight, how much of that 360 degrees comprehensive cover which people have been able to provide in schools and colleges, you will be able to provide through online home education. When schools and colleges will open, we have absolutely no idea. So are we equipped? Online colleges, online universities. If one Khan Academy is there, today it can be transformed into literally one university which can run the country, which can run the world. So I'm just giving you the challenges ahead, and there are entrepreneurs who are on the brink of creating things which we had never been able to imagine earlier. So that is the challenge. Whether either you become a part of the story or you get decimated by the story. Either you become a part of the story or you get decimated by the story. So this is the choice which you have. The cost of change is enormous. And the biggest cost is not the financial part. The biggest cost is your capability to change your mindset, is your capability to change your attitude. The biggest cost is that you become a learning individual and you become a learning professional. The biggest cost is that the strategies have to change. The mindsets of academic institutions have to change. Nonetheless, the cost of change in financial terms have to be borne by individuals, by families, by academic institutions. I find lots and lots of universities, lots and lots of academic institutions who feel that there is no need to invest in future. And if you don't invest in future, the future will bite back on you. And that particular point of time, you will be completely out of business, you'll be completely out of job. So here we are. And what this I call as a digital thinking. Can I continue for another 10-15 minutes?
Yes, sir. Sure. No problem.
Okay. Thank you. So this whole gamut of things which I have explained it to you needs what I call, generally I run a Bangalore Cybersecurity Awareness Initiative, and there I give a keynote address. The whole thing is designed, conceptualized and executed by me for school children and for college students. So there what I talk about is what I call as a digital thinking. So we have everything in place. You have your networking, innovation, literally anything. You people understand what I'm talking about. So all the parts of the jigsaw puzzle are in place. You are out of that jigsaw puzzle. So that is a challenge. And that which you can see in this particular slide. So everything is there, but you are out of that whole particular exercise. So why and how you are out of that whole particular exercise? Because we require something which we call as the digital thinking. We would have picked up expertise, we have picked up capabilities, but we have not picked up digital thinking. Digital thinking, in very simple terms, is your capability to understand the digital world outside you, your technical skills, and capability to navigate through the digital ecosystem to the best of your advantage while keeping yourself safe. So this is digital thinking. Unless we create this thinking, it primarily will happen through practice, to understanding social media, understanding all the resources, understanding where the predators are, understanding where the hackers are, understanding where to get what resources, how easily to collate and collaborate, how you can get connected to people all across the face of this earth, how easily you can pick up expertise, what all expertise you know, how you bring it together and remain safe in a world which is hacked. Hacking has become the new normal. So we will move further. Do you know of any person who is a digitally thinking enabled? It's very difficult to find. I've been trying to find. It's very difficult to find. And might be it's the beginning of a new line of thinking. And over a period of time, all of us will develop digital thinking. How do you achieve this knack, intuition, or this skill? This happens when you use the digital ecosystem, the digital resources, the digital capabilities, the communication, more and more for positive, proactive, knowledge related, skill creating related, training related, awareness related activities. Then slowly you will start developing, oh, this can be used for this purpose, this can be used for this purpose. And then also you start realizing what are the areas you need not go, what are the areas which will waste your time, what are the areas where you get into, then you will be able to waste 2 hours, 3 hours. And most of the times, what is the biggest challenge with social media is that it sucks in your time. There's something called dopamine, which gets created when you are into the social media. And lo and behold, I think most of the time, people are spending on the social media. So it was earlier the students and the younger age used to do. I think now literally anybody and everybody is hooked onto the social media. There's hardly any time when we are disconnected with a gadget. I think gadgets have become our biggest friend. Nonetheless, some gap has to be maintained. And the learning ecosystem which we talk about, I think it is a broken ecosystem. So the teachers have some other story to say, management has another story to say, the students have another story to say, the parents have another, and the society has a different story to say. So we are not on the same page. And with this transformation happening, I think things will become from bad to worse. So we have to be extremely critical of our existence, and also we have to be prepared to take it on. And you can take it on only when you finally know as to where you are and what is your journey. So where you stand today, so that is your white page, that is as is situation. And where you intend to go, that is your desired goal, and between the two, there is a gap analysis. And to bridge that gap analysis, you need human resources, you need funding, you need technologies, you need skills, and you have a timeline, you have validations, and that is how you traverse the journey and reach the desired goal with this in the stipulated time of the right quality, and after reaching there, feel extremely comfortable to deliver whatever you intend to. So transparency, responsibility, and accountability are the three systems on which this broken educational learning ecosystem can be faced. And as the only way all the stakeholders can come on the same page. How much of the stakeholders communicate to each other, at what level of transparency, responsibility, and accountability, or it is our permanent exercise to bite each other and claiming that we are perfectly fine and the other stakeholder of that particular ecosystem does not deliver. So that is the story which nobody will buy. The overall bigger ecosystem, I think that will beat the whole scene and all the drama which we have created. Is this skill a must? Is this skill a must? The answer is yes, yes, and yes. And that you which you're seeing in the right lower corner has to get integrated into the jigsaw puzzle, and only then it gets complete. And to get integrated, you will have to create lots of skills and foresight and thought processes so that he or she is able to manage the navigation of the digital ecosystem to best of his or her advantage while remaining safe. in the digital space. It makes the decision maker. So this is the only way where you can drive your own destiny. You are the final custodian, guide, mentor of your own destiny. You know where you're going, and you also know that just in case somewhere you miss out, you have the capability to rethink, redo, go to the drawing board in whatever jargon you say. You go there and again you set right and move on to the same journey, because there is no other journey. There is no other journey. The digital journey is the only journey. That is a common journey, which is our destiny. So this is the age of digital thinking. If you have it, you'll move forward. If you don't have it, that's the end of the story. And as we keep going further, there is nothing called a cyber world. There is nothing called a physical world. We have completely got integrated of what we call as the cyber physical world. What is the Industrial Revolution 4.0 or Industry 4.0, whichever we call it. So cyber and physical is a part of the same reality. When you are hacked and your money is transferred somewhere else, whether it's a physical reality or a cyber reality, I think everybody will say the physical reality. Because after that, you'll not be able to transact with that particular money which has already been stolen in the by method of electronic transfer of money illegally through unauthorized access. And this whole social media world will have to reinvent, redecipher for ourselves whether the companies change or they don't change. We have to change. It is a commercially created digital mess. It has nothing to do with social interaction. I call it the anti-social media. And it has reached to a level where most of the people who are hooked on to this particular medium, there's even a digital de-addiction center running in MIT. So they suffer from FOMO. So the fear of, what is this? Fear of missing out. So you just lost. Fear of missing out is turning out to be the biggest fear. We have become attention seekers for even the flimsiest of things. If you go to a college, I have gone to a college, as if you have become the, the president of Harvard University. I went out today. I was in it worth putting so much of effort into letting people know the flimsiest of things? So do we know where we are? If we know where we are, only then we will think and we will break our head as to where we intend to go. Do we intend to own our future? We have not been owning our future, and that is how we have landed in the problem which we have landed. I've been talking, I was talking, giving a lecture on health intelligence and how health intelligence failed us, because our primary concern has been political intelligence, business intelligence, and things of that nature. Health intelligence has never been our concern. And even with COVID-19 coming to light way back in November, the type of response and the type of attention and the type of resources and the type of time and energy which we have given to this particular epidemic, which later turned into a pandemic, I think we are getting the adverse results of the way we treated this virus, and today we are being treated by this virus. This is the world which we are moving into, and these are the technologies which will disrupt us left, right, and center, and they will decide and define the world. And if you're not competent to understand most of these technologies to a reasonable level, and at least one or two of these technologies, which per force we have to know, whether it's 5G or Internet of Things, machine learning, big data. So a couple of these technologies you are forced to know. Unless you know those technologies, you will not be comfortable in whatever work you do. And if you know those technologies, you will be able to transform your work in a manner which is unimaginable. I've been using technology, I say appropriate technology for that appropriate function, and that helped me as a police officer, as a bureaucrat, transform the nature of work which I did and to deliver in a manner which I did, and also to make it robust and permanent. Today I am out of the government, and tomorrow might be I'm out of the world, but this whole thing is there to stay, and it will keep on delivering over and over again for times immemorial. So that is the nature of work which we should intend to do. Our technology journey so far has not been very, very enthusing. Not been very, very satisfactory. We still remain the back office of the world and lots of other things. So from the first industrial revolution till the time we are reaching the fourth industrial revolution, I think we have not been the leaders of industrial revolution ever. It is high time that we become the leaders of this industrial revolution. That is the fourth industrial revolution, which blurs cyber and physical completely. And it is supposed to have 10 times more impact than the internet revolution itself. So we are at the cusp of change. And with that cusp of change, two other things which has happened, which has completely transformed our existence. One is the health crisis, and the second is work from home. All those other things were there earlier. How a work from home ecosystem can be made secure. We were discussing another conference of CII around 15 to 20 days back with Pawan Duggal and lots of other people. So this is the challenge which we are in. And the amount and the capability where we have reached is that there are 631 robots per 10,000 workers in South Korea, and we are still at 3. From 3 to 631, it will be a long, long journey. It will be an arduous journey. And this is where we are. So we find issues with the capabilities we have. 45% left because they did not have the capabilities, and the capabilities which we require in the future of integration, workflow automation, blockchain, and artificial intelligence are the things which we have not been capable of. And these are not words. These are not the way curriculums are made. These are practitioners' capabilities which you have to able to create in the student who is the product of that particular institution. That is he is able to go and able to go out and join a blockchain company, blockchain research, anything he can do. And this is where the engineering college education stands in this country. It is a sad commentary on the type of engineering colleges which you have created. We are in the middle of an engineering education crisis. According to AICTE, nearly 200 substandard engineering colleges have applied for SIT, wants to close down about 800 engineering colleges. It's not a question of unemployed, educated unemployed. It is a question of educated unemployed, unemployables. So this is on the education side. We are seeing on the governmental side, this is the road. It is a system in Estonia. They're able to provide around 3,000 government services at the click of a button and most secure on blockchain technology. It is Xroad is a centralized, decentralized data communication system. They're able to run elections. They're able to create companies from 123 countries from across the globe. You can run company, you can create citizens from 123 countries. So this is the nature of robust digital transformation, which has happened in a small country called Estonia, supposed to be the most innovative country in the world, to an extent that even NASDAQ was forced to go there and start a research project. NATO is running a cybersecurity center there for quite some time. This is where our future is. So this assembly line is of an automobile factory in China where there are no human beings. And this is the cartoon which says very clearly, oh, haven't you heard the industrial revolution is over and the robo has won. So we have already lost. As we move further, intelligence, and by intelligence, what he means is the quote by the founder of DeepMind, Demis Hassabis. So he runs the most important artificial intelligence company in the world, where he has put academic research and development with commercial product creation. And this is one of its kind. They have been able to create products like AlphaGo and AlphaZero, which has been transforming, redefining business enterprise artificial intelligence across the face of this earth. They have been able to create an AI tool by which they were able to bring down 40% of the energy consumption by a company of the nature and the size of Google. So he says, solve intelligence and use it to make the world a better place to live in. And as we move further to enthuse the people, the students who are there. So we are also in the process of doing something worthwhile. It might not be to a level of Western Europe or to a level of the US, but Indian startups have also done commendably well in the last couple of years. And there is an entrepreneurial climate. Certainly, it has been stagnated by the present crisis, but certainly it will take off once again. So Indian unicorns are also doing it. There is an entrepreneurial climate, and we should get into this and use this opportunity to make big companies. Byju's, you people will be able to appreciate how this company has created a completely different teaching pedagogy, a different format, and everybody likes, loves, relishes the content which is used by this company. So these companies will challenge the regular conventional ecosystem, the Byju's, the Udemy's, the Simply Learn, and companies of that nature. So the future is, given this whole pandemic at the back of our mind and whatever has been happening before then, what is the trend of technology in this world? So aggregation AI is the technology of the future. Artificial intelligence as a tool will be used for aggregation of literally anything and everything. And I keep talking about, as I move, after moving out of the government, that I will try and create a technology consultancy aggregator, which will be one of its kind, where the technologists and technology companies will come and they will offer their expertise to the outside world Today, even one technologist is not ready to open a technology consultancy company. And most of the technology consultancy is done by management consultants rather by technologists who are the practitioners of the game and who have the real capability and also the capability not only to consult but to execute and make the world a better place to live in. So demographic dividend, we have been talking, the total size of engineers, the social size of population, which is less than 35 years of age. That demographic dividend has to be translated into entrepreneurial capital. Entrepreneurship is the only way we can go ahead. And there's something with entrepreneurship which we would call it entrepreneurship. So that is within the organization, you develop the same capabilities and you take the organization in a trajectory which entrepreneur takes a new enterprise. So from demographic dividend, we'll have to transform the whole demographic dividend into entrepreneurial capital. So this is where we are. This is where we stand. This is COVID-19, 90 days, 100 days down the line. This is the digital transformation. This is the work from home. Home has become the capital of literally anything and everything. Whether it's office, whether it is education, whether it is financial transaction, social transaction, fun, frolic, cooking, whatever you call it. So home has become the final capital of the human being. And as we move further, this capital has to be made into the human capital, and the whole interface and the whole external interface has to come together to create a digital transformation which is worthwhile while working at home, while working outside home, while working in the wider world, while collaborating, while creating products, while marketing, while delivering, while elevating poverty, while changing the nature of trade commerce in this world. We have to make it happen. There is absolutely no other way out. The fourth industrial revolution and our transformation into a totally different world has to happen. There is no looking back. I wish you all the best in this transformative journey. And I thank St. Joseph College for giving me this opportunity for this exposition, which I presume would have satisfied most of these young, energetic, and inquisitive minds. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It was a truly amazing webinar. It was an eye-opener where we are actually standing, what we are supposed to do, and how we are supposed to do. I think it might have benefited all the students and all the faculty and all the people from industry or entrepreneurship who have joined this webinar. I thank you very much for this webinar.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to keep the chat box open now for your comments. I have some comments, questions coming up. So I request to post your questions. We have another 10 minutes for a Q&A session. So if you have any questions to sir, please post it over here. In the meantime, I request Dr. UC Niranjan to give his comments.
Thank you, Mr. Sahai. It was a wonderful webinar. I just cannot imagine that you're from IAS and your history background from St. Stephen's, but you have done such a wonderful job for Karnataka Police in the IT sector as KSP Van. It's really proud to have you on the webinar.
Thank you.
You touched upon everything from what are the current situation and how we can be a guide light to ourselves and how we have to embrace the change and so on. I just had one question. You come from a history background and you have this IAS background, and you also mentioned during your presentation that many times when you are developing this KSP Van, you were pushed to the corner. So what exactly did help you out to pull you up yourself to get out of that crisis?
See, the only way to move out of this crisis is to improve your knowledge and your expertise. And knowledge and expertise improvement happens. One is by reading. Second is by trying to do yourself. Third is meeting the experts. Fourth is going into field situations. And then above and beyond all these things, might be these four things, lots of people have and lots of people are trying. Then you have the guts and you have the courage. And finally, you develop an intuition that this will go right. And if it goes wrong, you are ready to face the consequences. And if there are issues coming in between, it might be huge bottlenecks or huge insurmountable stuff, but you have the courage, you have decided that there is no plan B. If there is plan B, there is no plan A. Ratan Tata says there is no plan B. So there is no plan B. So that is the, see, at the end of the day, what differentiates between achiever and non-achiever is only the courage and the guts. That is all.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's a great insight. I just wanted to ask you another thing. This KSP van, you also talked about a demographic dividend, which we want to convert to entrepreneurial capital. But in a country like India, where there is a big digital divide, how do we make our population, especially the younger population, to be digital savvy? You have any solutions?
See, today what is there? How did we become WhatsApp savvy?
Okay.
All of us are WhatsApp savvy, right? Yesterday
Yes.
I was talking about getting some domestic help from Orissa. And I said, because the Seva Sindhu app and all those things we require to get anybody from outside today. So for quarantine and things of that nature. So I asked the person who was doing it for me in Orissa. So I asked him, boss, how do we go about it? So he said, no, he has WhatsApp, so he can download other app also. He can use. There's no problem. And these are the people who are at the lowest end of the digital divide in backwaters of Orissa. Whether we have created the digital divide for our convenience or we don't have the capability to cross over that digital divide. One big cloud and one big capability of the skills which the country requires on one single cloud can take care of this world. The scalability to which things can be taken today is unimaginable. Whether we are ready to do that or we are not ready to do that. See, the total today also, if you take Google, it is around $700 billion, right?
Yes.
It is nothing more than that. Our economy was $2.5 trillion, and we don't need a Google. Might be even 10% or 5% of that will be sufficient enough to educate our whole country. So in $50 to $100 billion, might be we can take care of this country if we intend to do.
Okay.
If you want to divide and rule, it's cool. It's welcome.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, UCN sir. I'll have some questions on the chat box. I'll just put it in front of you. Recently, there has been a digital war going on between India and China. How much will this affect the Indian economy? What are the challenges that we are going to face ahead?
So it's basically more of a war of data and things of that nature. I don't think it is going to impact the economy in a huge manner. And when these things are decided, I think the backup systems also are kept in place. So all whatever is treated as a backup and whatever has to be put in place for the infrastructure, manufacturing and things of that nature. So that will come into play. And it's very difficult. It has happened 2-3 days back. It's very difficult to say what sectors it will impact and to what level. There is no denying the fact that 59 apps have been banned and there are a good number of contracts which have been cancelled. How it will play out, let's see. India is a strong and a competent country to handle the situations which it feels is in its favor.
Yes, sir. Thank you. What is your opinion on the brain drain that is happening? You know, the kids or the students who study here start working in abroad. What's your opinion on that?
See, brain drain, I don't have any great opinion, but the point is that there are two things. One is we have not been able to provide that opportunity. And the second thing is that those people don't have so much of love for their country to create something out here. So it works both ways. One, the ecosystem is not there. We are not even sure of the fact whether if that fellow does not go there, he will be able to create something here. And there also, once he goes, it is that ecosystem and those enterprises. If you go and work in Intel, if you go and work in NASA, if you work in these organizations, you don't have a choice. You have to deliver. Everybody delivers. So end of the day, we have to create an accountable ecosystem which is technologically thriving. See, we would have created some technology. We are in the technology age, but we don't have a technology mindset. What do you call a scientific temper of the earlier years is the technology mindset of today. It is the data mindset of today. our capability to understand where we are, and even at a very minuscule level, if we are able to create successful entities, I think that can be replicated. Then our incapability to cross the entrepreneurial threshold. If a big entrepreneurial success happens in this country, this is $1 billion, $2 billion, $3 billion is max. After that, that will sell it off and go. Your dreams are so limited. It is a completely non-aspirational country where every day you talk that the Indian middle class is a hugely aspirational middle class. It is not. How many of us talk about a $1 billion company? Nobody. What do you talk about? What is your package? 6 lakhs, 8 lakhs, 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs, 30 lakhs, 40 lakhs. What will that package do to this country? You will buy one apartment, you will buy a BMW, you will buy something else. That is the end of the story. You also don't know what to do with that. Beyond a point, you don't know what to do with your life.
Exactly. So we have the next question. What are the jobs or internship opportunities for a fresh EC, electronics and communication engineer or CS engineer graduating in police, especially in Karnataka?
See, I started with an internship program last year in Karnataka State Police, more on the sides of your machine learning, AI, even electronics, we don't mind. So there you can check up. So we have some internships available. Basically, I think we had planned for 10 internships for the whole year. So that is there. And specifically what it is, you'll have to check up with my successor. So he'll be able to tell you what the internships are and what is the modality of applying for it. We had some students last year from RV College, IIIT Bangalore, and from NIT Surathkal.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. The next question is on online teaching. Now, all these teachers are moving towards online teaching and they accepted this change. But from students' point of view, are they happy with this change? Will they accept this transformation permanently in the near future?
See, none of us have a choice. And if there is a huge amount of cost cutting, see, our education has become costly unnecessarily. So there's a huge amount of cost cutting which will happen because of this technological change. Now, the challenge or the biggest catch-22 situation is whether you feel that you have been able to transform to online teaching or not. So whatever I've gathered from most of the teachers, inclusive of you, is that you people have been able to transform. Correct. To best of my understanding, you people have not. The teaching pedagogy has not changed. You have just come on to the digital medium. Correct. The content, no new content has been created. Might be PPT or something, that would be nearly all. Online teaching is a multimedia experience. And only to create content for that online teaching for any branch of engineering, leave aside schools, colleges, I'm talking about any branch of engineering, will be a reasonably humongous task. And the quality of the content will decide, and that is the multimedia content, and all your connects thereof, of all the knowledge resources available in the world. Even we have not been able to index the relevant YouTube videos for each of your electronics and communication topics. Today also it is like a wild west. So that fellow goes on YouTube or he goes on Google and he puts some few words and something comes and he does something. And you run your anti-piracy software or whatever you run. So this is where we are. The moving on to the online digital mode is not the replication of the physical mode, physical methods and the physical content. Moving on to the digital mode is a totally different system of learning, totally different system of content, a totally different system of knowledge assimilation and usage of knowledge. I don't think that has even been thought upon in this country.
Yes, sir. The next question is, actually it is a statement, they want your opinion. Intentions and actions define us, not the outcome. What is your opinion on that?
Intentions and?
Actions define us, not the outcomes. What is your opinion on that?
Then what do you do with intentions and all that? Huh?
Yes.
What do you do with it? If you have no outcome, why should we have an education system? If we have not been able to create even one Nobel laureate, why should we have all those research institutions? If we have not been able to create any product, why do we need IT companies? Outcomes will define, nothing else will define. But the accepted presumption is that it should not happen in the wrong manner. The modalities have to be true and right. You cannot hack and pick up a design from US and then say it is our product. Or you cannot import a drone from China and write make in India. Only outcomes will decide, and if anybody is in the misconception that outcomes will not decide, you see the future will be extremely harsh. Till today, outcomes have not decided anything in this country. But as days go by, it will be the only outcomes it will decide. Because nobody today has the money to spend on you for no reason.
Yes. Okay, sir. The next question is related to 5G. They want to know your opinion on 5G.
5G is a great technology, and it should happen with the necessary precautions. Yeah. And all whatever hype is created today or tomorrow, some company will come. From which country and what company, I don't know. Otherwise, we will be left out in the race of the fourth industrial revolution. It will impact our education, it will impact our healthcare, it will impact everything. 5G is not just a technology, it is a completely earth-shattering experience which will change the way we live, the way we think, the way we transact, the way we deliver, the way we earn, and literally anything and everything.
Exactly, sir.
The time lag is, I think, 40 milliseconds or something at particular point in time, and that will come down to 1 millisecond, and our capability to download a picture will take, I think, around some 4 seconds or whatever. And your capability to do a surgeon's capability to do a surgery which is off location. Okay, do you think, see today, if we were to have 5G and if we were to have a very robust infrastructure and that sort of a training, we could have handled a much more number of corona patients without getting into the ICU, without getting into anywhere.
Yes, sir.
And that is a layman's understanding. I'm not an expert on 5G technology, so let me tell you that.
Exactly, sir. Okay, we have a question from Rashmi. I have unmuted Rashmi. Please go ahead, Rashmi.
So gig economy you talked about, is it already in place anywhere, or like can you expand on that?
See, gig economy, you understand, is that it is not an employment on a regular basis. So that's point number one. Point number two, it is based on expertise, skills, and competencies. Point number three, sometimes it also happens to be a aggregation of different skills. So the capability of a project manager or capability of an enterprise to put individuals with professional expertise to a particular job and provide a project manager or for whatever purpose. So that capability also has to come into play, and that capability large number of us don't have. If today you were supposed to run St. Joseph's College of Engineering through the gig method, you will find it extremely difficult. So that capability has to come first. Not denying the fact that gig economy is already in place. It is certainly beyond the nascent level. So if there is a total economy running for $100 billion, I think certainly gig economy would be $2-3 billion. And most interesting part, which I saw only 2 days back on a video of this magazine called Guardian, they say before the Industrial Revolution, it was only the gig economy. So any person who had any expertise, skill or anything was employed directly only for that particular task or for that particular job or for that particular project. So I hire 5 carpenters and I have to do some wardrobe of a room or two carpenters. I do the job and that is the end of it. He goes, he finds his job somewhere else. So that is where we are moving, because we are not in a position. See, one is that expertise does not come in handy. I pick up a company like HP and I give them 5 crores or whatever a year to do my job. Who they employ, I don't know. And I will not be able to dictate it to them. Or they will say it is attrition, that fellow has gone. Then what do I do? In a gig economy, if I have the capability, because that capability is equally important, to get the right people and get the right job done. And to transact in the right manner. So the costing of the capability, the evaluation of the expertise is also important. But I presume as we go by, and more so in the commercial space, I presume that we will not be having people who are substandard or the people would not be there, would be charging exorbitant. So this is the whole interplay of skills, competencies, economy, agility, fluidity, money consideration, purpose, and delivery. This is the gig economy in totality. We have certainly entered into it. We have reached some stage. There is a very clear-cut understanding. How much of it has translated into reality is still a matter of conjecture. There is no denying the fact that this is our future roadmap. So that's it. I think Rashmi have been able to satisfy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, I get that. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, I have the last question. In spite of best cybercrime department in the country, why the conviction rate is less, or the conviction of the cases are less?
See, conviction rate is something in cyber crimes which is less all across the face of this earth. And until unless this territorial stuff is sorted out, we have a IT Act which talks about extraterritorial jurisdiction, but that extraterritorial jurisdiction cannot be applied and executed. So as long as most of the crime happen from outside the borders of India, so that's number one. Second is the social media companies, they are not ready to part with their data. And the whole procedure of the cybercrime investigation from the investigative officer to wherever it gets into trial, that clarity which we have for our other cases, I think that clarity is still to come by. Next is admissibility of electronic evidence. So there are some places it is there, how well, in which manner to get the evidence, to store the evidence, to analyze the evidence. So all those things are there. I think both from, what do you say, from the concept of law, from the concept of investigative skills, which is a general spread out investigative skills. We might have one or two, yeah. That is there. Then admissibility of electronic evidence, the whole process of the prosecutors and the trial, I think whole combined, this is the place where we are in. There is no, and then what international protocols you have? You don't have, you still have to go to the same extradition and things of that nature.
Yes, sir. Okay, so I think we have come to the end of the Q&A session.
Thank you.
So, yeah, so any final thoughts from your side for our students?
I think we can ask the students if they have something worthwhile to tell us, guide us, or something where we have gone wrong, or some very futuristic stuff which I would have missed by.
Yeah. So, students, if you have any such things which sir has missed out to address, please put it in the chat box. Or also you can put it in our feedback form, which is being just posted, so that we will try to address it in the future. Yusian sir, any final comments from your side?
See, final comments is only one, that we have crossed over a very sedentary, settled life and assurances which people have given us for the future, whether it is colleges, academic institutions, managements, enterprises, governments, whatever it may be. The future has to be, and it will turn out to be extremely unsettling. The only thing which can pull you through is your capability to acquire knowledge and expertise, capability to visualize in the future, and capability to adapt and perform. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I ask Dr. UC Niranjan if he has anything to say before we conclude.
It was a great webinar by Mr. Sahai. We could see a historian from St. Stephen's. We could see an IPS officer. We could see Yuval Harari coming there, and Steve Jobs. Everybody culminated in this webinar, and we could see in every slide which he presented his passion and his intuitions which he has drawn, and it was so great that he shared all his experiences and intuitive learnings which he has done throughout his life with all of us. It's a great mind-opening and mind-boggling webinar. I thank Mr. Sahai for this great webinar, and I also thank SJEC for this wonderful webinar and made us attend this. Thank you very much.
Only one last thought, that with all the people who have participated, now that I have moved out into the government, and I also need to interact with people who are in business and academics in the outside world, and I'll also be, I've nearly got into business already. So I would request St. Joseph's College of Engineering and also Mr. Niranjan to share my email address and my phone number. So my mobile number is 984524669. which Keith and Rashmi knows, and my email ID you can share with all the participants, and they are free to interact with me whenever they want for whatever purposes. So that is the final message from my side. I wish you people stay safe, and all of us keep away from COVID-19 and have a very purposeful life ahead. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you very much for the wonderful webinar. As you said that you are willing to share the slides with the participants. Once the participants fill up the form, I will mail them along with your contact details. So with this, we have come to the end of today's webinar. I thank the management of St. Joseph Engineering College, the principal, the director, without whose support this wouldn't have been possible. I finally thank the head of the department, Dr. Dayakshini, Ms. Rashmi Alemane, the branch counselor of IEEE SJC student branch, and a special thanks to Dr. UC Niranjan, the chair of IEEE Mangalore subsection. He has been very supportive. I just sent a reminder yesterday and a message yesterday, and he attended today's webinar. Thank you, sir, for joining. And finally, thanks to sir for being here, spending his valuable time with us. It was truly, amazing experience listening to you over this webinar. And finally, also a big thank you to all the participants. We had over 150 participants who participated in this webinar. We'll be continuing this webinar series. We will be having few more speakers from the industry who will come and share their experience, how we can go ahead in this difficult time and crisis time. So with this, we conclude. Thank you very much.
Thank you.